You have a budget. You have categories. You have an app that tracks everything. And somehow, by the third week of the month, the numbers in the app no longer match what is actually happening in your bank account, and you have no idea where the gap came from. This is the single most common failure point in modern budgeting, and it is not because you are bad with money. It is because purely digital budgeting removes a physical sensory signal that your brain actually needs to register spending as real. The fix that is working for people in 2026 is not abandoning your apps and going back to pure cash envelopes either. It is a hybrid system that takes the best of both, and we are building it for you right now. Welcome to Daily Money Mindset. The original cash envelope system was simple. You withdraw your budgeted amount in cash, divide it into labeled envelopes by category, and when an envelope is empty, spending in that category stops until next month. It works because of a well-documented psychological effect called the pain of paying. Physical cash creates a tangible sense of loss when you spend it that digital transactions, especially tap to pay, almost completely eliminate. The problem with the classic version in 2026 is obvious. Most spending happens online. Recurring bills cannot be paid in cash, and carrying large amounts of physical cash creates real security concerns. The hybrid system solves this by splitting your spending categories into two distinct groups based on where the money is actually spent, not by trying to force everything into one format. The first group is what we call friction categories, discretionary spending where the pain of paying effect genuinely changes behavior. This typically includes dining out, entertainment, personal shopping, and hobby spending. These categories get the physical cash envelope treatment because that is where impulse and emotional spending happens most, and where the tangible cash limit does the most psychological work. The second group is structural categories: rent or mortgage, utilities, subscriptions, insurance, debt payments. These are fixed or near-fixed obligations where a cash envelope adds no behavioral benefit because there is no impulse decision happening. These stay entirely digital, on autopay, tracked through your banking app or a budgeting tool, because the goal here is reliability and automation, not friction. The setup process is straightforward. At the start of each pay period, calculate your total budget exactly as you would for any system. Identify which categories belong in the friction group versus the structural group based on where you have personally experienced overspending. This is individual, so audit your last 3 months of transactions and notice which categories consistently blow past their planned amount. Withdraw cash only for the friction categories, divide it into physical envelopes or a simple cash wallet organizer, and let everything else flow digitally and automatically. Here is the digital layer that makes this a true hybrid rather than just old-school envelopes with a modern label. For your friction categories, in addition to the physical cash, set up a corresponding digital tracking entry, a simple note in your phone, a budgeting app category, or even a notes app list, where you log every cash withdrawal from the envelope in real time. This solves the biggest weakness of pure cash systems, which is the total inability to see your spending patterns over time for analysis. You get the behavioral benefit of physical cash and the data benefit of digital tracking simultaneously. Let us address the practical concerns that come up immediately with any cash-based system. Security is the first one. Carrying large sums of cash is a real risk. The solution is to withdraw smaller amounts more frequently rather than your entire monthly friction budget at once. A weekly withdrawal schedule for friction categories keeps the amount on hand low while still preserving the psychological effect, since the envelope still runs dry and forces a stop before the next withdrawal. The second concern is online spending within friction categories. What do you do when your discretionary spending happens on a website rather than in person? This is where the hybrid system gets clever. For online discretionary purchases, withdraw the cash equivalent of what you plan to spend. Physically set it aside in the envelope as spent, and then make the online purchase digitally. This sounds redundant, but it preserves the tangible tracking, You can see at a glance by looking at the envelope exactly how much friction category budget remains, regardless of whether the spending happened in a store or a browser tab. The third concern is for couples or households managing this together. The hybrid system actually solves a common point of friction in shared finances, because physical envelopes create a visible, shared reference point that digital app balances often do not. Both partners can see directly how much remains in the dining out envelope without needing to open an app or ask the other person. This visibility reduces a surprising amount of money-related conflict in relationships because the information is ambient rather than something that has to be actively requested. Now let us talk about which digital tools pair well with this system in 2026, because the digital side matters as much as the cash side. A simple shared notes document works for many people and costs nothing. For those who want more structure, budgeting apps like YNAB or Goodbudget allow you to create digital categories that mirror your physical envelopes, letting you log cash withdrawals as transfers into a virtual envelope balance. The specific tool matters less than the consistency of pairing every cash withdrawal with a digital log entry, because that pairing is what closes the visibility gap that pure cash systems have always had. Let us talk about realistic results, because this matters more than the mechanics. People who implement this hybrid correctly typically report a meaningful reduction in their friction category overspending within the first month, often in the range of 15 to 30%, simply because the physical constraint of an empty envelope is a harder stop than a notification that says you are approaching a limit. Digital limits are abstract and easy to override mentally. An empty envelope is not. The deeper principle behind why this works is worth understanding because it applies beyond just this specific system. Behavior change that relies purely on willpower and tracking tends to fail over time because willpower is a depletable resource. Behavior change that relies on environmental design, making the desired behavior the path of least resistance, tends to be far more durable. The cash envelope forces the desired behavior through its physical limitation, rather than requiring you to consciously resist temptation every single time, which is exactly why it has remained effective across generations, even as money has become almost entirely digital. If you are ready to actually close the gap between your budget and your bank account, hit the like button and subscribe to Daily Money Mindset for 3 videos every week on practical money systems that work. Drop a comment below and tell us which category in your own spending tends to blow past budget the most. That is usually your best candidate for the cash envelope treatment. Resources and recommended tools are linked in the description below.